Welcome to the Wolverine Digest podcast, the best spot for objective and authentic coverage of Michigan athletics. If you want open dialogue, honest opinions, and in-depth coverage of the maize and blue, this is the podcast for you. And now, here's your host, Brandon Brown, joined as always by Chris Breiler.
I just want to start by saying go blue.
Emergency podcast.
An emergency.
Oh,
Red alert.
wow.
Red alert.
Emergency podcast on a Saturday night.
Wow.
I'm obviously being a little bit dramatic there, but dude, you decided to give me a call and you said, what do you think, man? You think we should drop in and talk about some of this stuff a little bit? Obviously, the biggest news out there, Frankie Collins transferring away from Michigan after just one freshman season where he didn't play very much. Played about 11 minutes a game, didn't score a whole lot, but this is what you and I were just talking about before we went live. This happens all the time with it's probably every fan base, but obviously we're only deep in the Michigan fan base. But if a recruit decommits or a kid transfers or whatever the kid leaves early to go pro, whatever the case may be, Michigan fans immediately are like, good riddance. Don't let the door hit you in the ass on the way out. And I'm just like, no. I think this is a little bit of a bummer. I like Frankie Collins. I know looking at his stats, he didn't exactly blow it up. But if you watch that kid play, you know there's something there. He brought something to the court that was undeniable. His energy, his bounce, his speed, his defense. He's got a little bit of he's got what I like at point guard. And now he's leaving. And it does seem to be like there's some more stuff going on here. More to come, maybe. It's just kind of a weird situation. But I'm always for, like, I don't know, man. If he thinks it's in his best interest to leave, then, more power to him. I don't like it. I like the idea of him being the starting point guard next year, but I don't know. That rubs me the wrong way when I see people say stuff like that. I know it does you too. We've talked about it quite a bit before, but this is weird because we've got a little behind the scenes information that you kind of, you manifested on your own. I mean, this isn't something that we would write a story about or anything, but it would have come to fruition had he not transferred. What is it that I'm talking about? What's that tease I'm giving right there?
It's funny because like on the last podcast we did, I think it was last Wednesday, I'd even said, like, we've got some really cool things that are coming up and some things that I think nobody else, is going to be doing. And one of the things that we had coming up was, an exclusive interview with Frankie Collins. He had agreed to it. I had reached out to him and he was all on board. And this was I think it was a week ago. It was
1 week ago,
April 23rd. And what's interesting about it is I was very specific in my language in, wanting to schedule that interview, and that I wanted him to be the first University of Michigan basketball player to appear on the show. And he was all about it at the time. And then since has, the communication really fell off and it didn't make any sense. And now maybe that's a reason why, but I just think it's interesting because it seems like maybe things evolved pretty quickly from, Frankie Collins feeling like he was going to be in Ann Arbor to now all of a sudden entering the transfer portal. So I think the timing there is really interesting. And then I think, transfers happen all the time, but you also have, Terrence Williams putting out like a very cryptic tweet and then deleting it saying like, the politics of the whole thing is a shame. And then, deleting that. And then you have guys like Hunter Dickinson and Jace putting out tweets about, what's going on with Shannon and Texas Tech and then deleting those out. And it just kind of seems like right now there's a lot going on with the Michigan basketball program. And up until Frankie Collins entered the transfer portal, I was kind of leaving a lot of it to like, sometimes things just happen and smoke, because we've been hearing these things now for the last few days. And you kind of think, maybe it's more rumor than anything else. And this, kind of gives some substance to some of the other things that we've been hearing about.
Well, it just happened so quickly. Like you said, he fully agreed to and was on board with coming on the show a week ago. And so that's why I think both you and I were like, he's not going anywhere. Like, like having a little bit of scoop was a negative in this case, because we just had communicated with him and he was planning on coming on the show and now he's transferring. So like, I'm with you. I didn't really know if it was going to happen. We kind of saw some smoke, but we weren't sure. We hear about different things. We've got different people that we talked to. And obviously not obviously, but one of the big clues that was out there was Frankie like mysteriously deleted everything from his Instagram account that had to do with Michigan. And that always comes
You
up.
see the same thing when people break up. It's the first thing you're like, oh shit, that relationship is in trouble because Melissa's nowhere to be found in those pictures. Where is Melissa?
Yeah. So that can sometimes mean something. Sometimes it doesn't. In this case, it did. And the unfortunate thing there is that Terrence Williams did the same thing. Did he not? Didn't he remove everything from his? And
he did. He
chiming in, about the politics and what's going on. And I don't know. It's weird, man. It's a weird energy right now around Michigan basketball. Terrence Shannon, maybe it was an NIL thing. Maybe it was some admission stuff. It was apparently, the Michigan players think it was because the head coach at Texas Tech wouldn't allow him to get the correct credits to change his status to then come to. I mean, there's just a whole bunch of stuff that kind of went along with this, and it's just really strange right now, given the culture given the strength that Juwan Howard seems to have at building a culture, and the success that the team has had on the court. It's like these things. These turmoil type of things shouldn't be happening at a place like Michigan, but they are right now. Michigan missed out on Terrence Shannon, but gets a transfer commitment from Jalen Llewellyn just yesterday, and now there's some speculation that that's one of the reasons Frankie Collins is leaving, when Llewellyn's not really like a true point guard. It looks like the two, from what I've seen, could have coexisted pretty well as a 1-2 guard, kind of I don't know, man. It's just weird. I found it weird. Seemed odd and out of place when all the news started popping up that he might be leaving. Now he drops it on social media today, and we're like, what the hell, man? We thought he was coming on the show to talk about Michigan basketball and everything that's going on, and now he's transferred and going somewhere else. And I saw this out there. I didn't realize this when he was going through the recruiting process, but Frankie Collins was at 3 or 4 different high schools as a prep player. And so you wonder now, is this kind of in this kid's DNA a little bit? Again, I'm not judging. He can do whatever he wants. I hope he's happier wherever he ends up. I hope he's doing the best thing for himself. But when you go to 3 or 4 different high schools, you start to wonder, like, the going gets a little tough, or he's something that, rubs him the wrong way a little bit, or he doesn't like this, or he doesn't like that, and he just packs up and leaves. That's not the greatest sign in the world, but still, hope everything works out well for him. But as a Michigan fan and as someone who covered the team, I was excited by the opportunity of what he could look like as a starting point guard last year. I mean, we talked about it a lot. When Devontae Jones wasn't having his best outings, you and I both would always be like, dude, get Frankie in there, man. He brings some juice to that team.
He was at least an energy that, that Michigan seemed to be lacking offensively a lot. So,
yeah. So, I don't know.
Well, and you can see it in the comments that, and that's the other thing, is that it doesn't seem like, it's going to stop with Frankie, at least if you're, reading the tea leaves. Like, yes, there's been, whispers about Terrence Williams, Kobe Buffkin's name has been thrown out there. And, I try to take as much of that as I can with a grain of salt, but then, Frankie ends up announcing he's going to end up in the portal. And it's just weird when you go back to, like, you look at this class and, Caleb Houston and Frankie Collins and all these guys that were coming in, and kind of what you thought this was going to turn into for Juwan Howard. And it really, that whole deal seems kind of shaky at best. And I know they've got talent coming in, but it just goes to show, man, that, what John Beilein was able to do here for so long consistently is not easy to do. And it's not all about recruiting guys that have great stars. Like, team chemistry and being able to play well together, and, cultivating the right environment. Like, that's something that matters a lot. And I don't know if Juwan Howard has quite mastered that yet. And maybe this is, the result of some of that.
Yeah, it's interesting you use that word chemistry, because you wonder, I mean, the basketball team for the last couple of years seems so connected and close, and like they really are friends off the court. And you wonder, I mean, like, they had to be talking to each other about this stuff. Like, did Hunter Dickinson announce that he's coming back, knowing that Frankie Collins is about to transfer and Musa and Caleb are both checking out the NBA? They may come back still. I mean, they've got a while to get that figured out. But, and Terrence,
that's true. I just want to say before you go on, that's a fair point. Beilein really didn't have to deal with NIL and what some of the coaches today are having to deal with. But again, there, to an extent, there was, there's always some of that going on. But the reality is, it's still a skill building a team where, guys work together. It's not just about, stars on the floor. And you see it happen in the NBA when you try to load up on, premier players. It doesn't always work. Like, team chemistry really does count. especially in college basketball.
Yeah, instead, Beeline just had to deal with dickbags like Will Wade and Dollar Bill Self and all these other guys who were doing NIL shit like
right.
seediest way
Come
possible.
on. Beeline was still competing with it. Yeah.
And Beeline was doing just fine. And now, yeah, I mean, that's a whole other episode right there. The seedy underbelly of college basketball. NIL,
I get the point. I get the point they're trying to make is, it sort of has changed the game a little bit to where, things are more fluid and it's easier for those things to happen. But, certainly I go back to it, and Brandon, this, you've been in coaching and not at that level, but if you've played or you've been a coach, you understand team chemistry counts for a lot. And I think that John Beeline was really good at cultivating that, not just in the locker room, but on the floor. You could see the results of that. And it just really didn't happen for this team until tournament time. They turned it on. But again, even in the off season, it's like the social media stuff. Now you've got Frankie in the portal. It's like, you just like to see a team, I think, that's a little more disciplined in a lot of different areas. It's
kind of weird too. You look back at like Zeb Jackson transferring now, like, dude, there's a plenty of minutes available for him on this team now that's what I'm saying. It's just weird. That was a while ago now, and he was apparently dealing with some things. He was away from the team before he then transferred, and now he's announced that he's going to VCU. He can play the point. He can play the two. He can even play the three. He's about 6'5". He can do a lot of different things, and you've got multiple spots kind of opening up now instead of going out and getting a Jalen Llewellyn. Why couldn't that have been Zeb Jackson? Instead of having to chase down a Terrence Shannon, you keep some of these guys in house. I don't know. There's a lot goes on behind the scenes and in practice and meetings rooms that we'll never know about. But you see Terrence Williams throw out words like politics, and you see Hunter Dickinson throw out things like going after another team's head coach, where this kind of stuff goes on to make things difficult for these players to make decisions and find the best settings for themselves. And I don't know, man. It's, we're going on several years every year Juwan Howard's been there now. He's went to the transfer portal to try to find a guy to come in and start right away when he's got dudes that he recruited and brought in that look like they're getting pushed to the side a little bit. I'd be lying if I said that I didn't think that rubbed some people the wrong way. Like I said, I don't know what the exact...
Is it? It's weird.
And I know they're trying to make the roster better. Like, there's two sides to that coin for sure, but yeah, it's tricky, man. It's tricky to navigate all that stuff.
It's really strange how, and I'm thinking out loud here, and maybe this isn't right, but Jim Harbaugh and Juwan Howard's, first few years in Ann Arbor, how closely they mirror each other in terms of like Juwan Howard going to the portal to get, point guards, and the way Jim Harbaugh used the portal to get quarterbacks and wanting to use your own guys, and maybe seeing some of the fallout and, the tremendous success year one, the kind of maybe a little bit of a struggle year two. It's just, you see a lot of similarities between the two. And I think a lot of people have brought up concerns about NIL in general. I put up an article about it earlier today. Desmond Howard said he's concerned about, the state of college football or the trajectory that things are on. I can't remember the player's name, but he plays for UCLA. I think he was, first team All-American last year. Was he the Blitnikoff Award winner? Is considering going out to UCLA or USC now. And a lot of people think there's tampering there because there's an NIL deal that's involved. And so the landscape of college athletics in general is changing. And I think it's difficult for college coaches these days to navigate those waters. And I think you're seeing some of the fallout of that, with guys like Frankie, and you hear rumors about a guy like Monty Bates possibly coming in. And it's almost like, it feels like pro sports. You're talking money, NIL deals, players shifting around. It's, a lot of moving parts and pieces.
I can't remember where the kid was from. It was a basketball player, maybe
Addison from Pitt, correct?
Oh yeah, the wide receiver from Pitt heading out to USC. But yeah, there was an agent actually put a tweet out there representing a player at Kansas State. It was like, my player is worth more than this. I'm just like, what is happening now? And there's, I think, a guy from Miami maybe is threatening to sit out. It's like, now we've got college players doing holdouts to get better.
That's what it was. Yeah, I think I said UCLA. It was Pitt. Apologies. Yeah, so it was Addison from Pitt. I think didn't he win the Blitnikoff? Isn't that goes to the top wide receiver? I think he was. Yeah, maybe he's considered one of the top receivers last year. But anyway, it's really interesting to see how, all of this is shaping the college landscape. And I don't know how much of that played a factor in what's happening with Frankie Collins. But again, you go back to, what you heard with a guy like Terrence Williams and talking about the politics of it all. And it just seems like I don't know, man. It seems like everything is on shaky ground in terms of like what a roster is going to look like from one year to the next.
Yeah, and you mentioned Imani Bates' name. I mean, he's been a polarizing figure. He reclassified at high school. His dad started some bunk academy to play.
So you talk about red flags with Frankie. You know what I mean? Are you looking at the same thing with a guy like Imani Bates? You know, are you here? You know, is he the Tate Martell of?
Aside from a little bit of a hype machine in high school with Imani Bates and the Bates Academy thing that his dad, I mean, like Imani he wasn't in charge of that. That was his dad.
Yeah.
he didn't go to 4 different high schools. I mean, you know what I'm saying? Like, I don't know. It's weird. It's where we are nowadays. I know there's been Desmond Howard certainly isn't the first player to chime in about the trajectory of college athletics. Danny Cannell's been all over Twitter today talking about different stuff. Aaron, what the hell's that guy's name? He's on TV too. He played at Notre Dame. Bald dude, played defensive tackle. He put a long message out talking about, talking about the state of college sports and where things are going, and guys holding out and wanting big money deals before they even get on campus. And
I mean, dude, high school kids that haven't even stepped foot on campus yet, signing multi-million-dollar deals. Like, that's the rare. That's not, you're not seeing that happen a lot. But I'm just saying, like, it really does seem kind of wild the way things are working. And then when you look at a school like Michigan, it really puts you at a disadvantage because they clearly aren't interested in playing that game, at least at the level that some of these other programs clearly are to win titles. And so, that's another thing. Like, what do you do? Like, are you really trying to compete? And if you are, you got to be willing to play the game. And so I go back to what Des said during the broadcast earlier today. It's not just college football. It's college athletics in general. It seems unsustainable on its current path.
Yeah. A guy like, I'd love to hear what Jay Billis has to say right now. That dude's been chirping and running his mouth for years about paying players, and it's crumbling the very sport that made him who he is. I mean, college basketball has been in a weird spot for a long time. It's been dark, and people have been breaking rules seemingly, without being punished for a long time. But things are happening so fast right now, with guys transferring and leaving and want money. And I mean, like all these ripple effects, all these issues are popping up with, I mean, it hasn't even been a year.
But here's the issue though. Here's the issue. And I don't want to get into like the bigger world picture of it all, but if you are the NCAA or you are the university and you do try to step in and you do try to mitigate that, now you really are sort of stepping into, you're interfering with free market, right? With what NIL is designed to do, which is allow these guys to make. So it really does kind of get fuzzy there. I think now that you've sort of let the toothpaste out, it's going to be really hard to put it back in. Now, if they had come out with some sort of rules and regulations, or maybe like, a 3-step sort of like rollout where over the course of several years, they rolled it out so that they knew how it was going to work, but they didn't do that. And now you're at a place where these things are happening. And, like I said earlier, I just don't think, even if you try to rein it in at this point, people were already doing sketchy shit before this was legal. Now, if you try to go ahead and rein it in at this point, it's not going to happen.
Yeah, it's not going to happen. So Michigan basketball, obviously, well, I don't know. Would you call it turmoil? Would you call it chaos? Or is that too strong right now? It's a little bit.
I would call it. What do you call it when it's turbulent? It's turbulent.
Turbulent. Okay.
It's tumultuous right now. Yeah.
Perhaps
things are
some weirdness. Frankie out. Maybe Musa and Caleb out if they stick in the NBA. Hunter back. Couldn't get Terrence Shannon. You get the kid from Princeton. Maybe Imani Bates. Yeah, a little bit, man. A little bit rocky, a little bit bumpy. But we'll see how it pans out.
I think it's still, you still have to give Juwan Howard the benefit of the doubt, because no matter what no matter what you say about what's happening with the roster or maybe what happened with the season, at the end of the day, he's made deep tournament runs. He's been successful during his time here by and large. And he's earned the right to give him the benefit of the doubt. So we'll see what it looks like, in the coming weeks with this, because I have a feeling it's going to change, what we thought the starting lineup might look like, 2 weeks ago versus what it, will look like 2 weeks from now is might be completely different.
I was putting it down on paper. I'm like, Frankie, Terrence Shannon, Caleb, Musa, Hunter.
You
Dude,
could see the graphics. There were all sorts of
Yeah.
social media accounts putting them out, like Michigan starting 5, and Shannon was in there, and Frankie leading the way. And it's like,
Nope.
not
No
a lot.
Shannon, no Frankie. So now, I mean, dude, is it Doug McDaniel time right out of the gate? All 140 pounds of him? Like, I mean, like, he's never going to be that big, but I mean, he's obviously pretty undersized right now coming out of high school. I mean, without Frankie Collins on the team-
DMs, hit the DM.
Without Frankie Collins on the team, Michigan does not have a true point guard on its roster right now. I mean, Doug McDaniel will be there, but he's not yet. And I mean, yeah, we're waiting to see, until June 1st. We won't know exactly what Caleb Houston and Musa Diabate are doing. Hunter Dickinson back. That's real big. That's a nice stabilizing factor to have on your starting 5 and on your roster, an All-American center like Hunter. But, yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how this whole thing plays out. And I don't know. I don't – over the last couple of days, I think we started to feel like this Frankie thing might have been real. But, again, just a week ago, he was talking about coming on the show with us. And so I'm thinking, he's not going anywhere right now. But it's one of those things. We have examples over the course of the years. I know I certainly do, covering recruiting, where you literally get told something and the exact opposite happens like the next day.
Giles Jackson's mom told me he was not going anywhere, and not 24 hours later, he announced he was transferring.
Yeah, so things do change. Sometimes you get bad information. Sometimes good information changes in a hurry. It's just the way it is, man. It's the way it is. And a lot of these kids with NIL and with social media and with their branding, they want to control all of that themselves. So it's hard. It's hard to get a beat on, what we think is going on. Like I said, 3 days ago, if you had asked me if Frankie Collins was leaving, I'd have said no. No, he just agreed to come on our show with us, and he was excited about it. Why would he do that? And now he's transferring. So, and like you said with Giles Jackson, his mother was like 100% unequivocally, no, not transferring. It's all. She was adamant. Yeah, she was adamant about the fact that he wasn't transferring. And then again, literally a day later, he's out. So one of those things, man. It's the way things are nowadays. We're all just trying to keep up a little bit. I trust the people I talk to. I know you do too, especially when it's the kid, the athletes themselves. But nothing's foolproof. Nothing's bulletproof. Nothing's 100%. So we'll see what happens with Caleb Houston, Musa Diabate, their decision. We'll see what happens with the rest of the transfer portal. We'll see if anybody else jumps in there. We'll see if anybody else comes to Michigan, and then that freshman class might have to play some more minutes that maybe they weren't expecting right out of the gate. We will see. So there you go. There's Michigan basketball in a nutshell right now. The NFL draft, dude, is officially over. Obviously some big happenings. Aidan Hutchinson going number 2 overall to the Detroit Lions. I'm excited about that, man. I think Aidan was a very, very safe pick. I still think he has a lot of upside. I still think he can be really, really good. I saw somebody, I think it was Anthony Broom, put out a graphic because somebody said, the Lions, man, they boned it up. They took Aidan Hutchinson. His ceiling is only Jared Allen. I mean, that's as good as he could be. Jared Allen led the NFL in sacks like 3 or 4 separate seasons. He had 22 sacks in a season, like 15, 16, or 17 a couple other times. Like, if Aidan Hutchinson can be that good, like everybody and their brother would take that. And I think he can be that good. I think he can be that effective. I think he's going to be a glue guy. I think he's going to be an amazing presence in the locker room because of his approach and his work ethic and everything. I just think it was an awesome pick. I know you're not you're not a Lions diehard, but
wait a minute. No. That has changed. That is officially changed. I am now on board. I am a Detroit Lions fan. I made the announcement on the Facebook page on the Winged Helmet, but I'm all in on the Lions now. To me, Aidan, I don't know how good he's going to be in his professional career, but the way that the whole storybook season went in 2021, for him to get drafted and stay in Detroit and to go to that franchise and to be that type of guy, I think he's what that franchise needs in the locker room. You can never have enough of those guys. There was zero risk. It was all upside. And I absolutely love the pick. And to be honest, I'm excited to go to Ford Field and watch the Lions play and watch Aidan Hutchinson out on the field. I am a Lions fan now. And listen, somebody once accused me. They were like, well, don't jump on now. And I was, I'm saying after 3-13, 3-13-1, I think was the record last year. I can
Right.
jump on. Now is the time. It's not like
Yeah.
they're coming off of resounding success, over the last 2 decades,
Fair.
3 decades. It's been a while.
This
I
isn't like
feel
a bandwagon situation.
Correct. They've drafted a player I can get behind. I've got some intrigue there. I've been looking for a reason to get into an NFL team. The Lions have now won my heart. So, we'll see what happens.
And number 97 is available on the Lions roster. So I'd be really surprised if Aidan wasn't in that 97 jersey. But I'm excited because I try not to really play this card too often, but it's about as relevant as it's ever been for me because Aidan was a local product when I was covering recruiting. I got to know him extremely well. I got to know his dad. I got to know his mom. I got to know, I went down to San Antonio when he was down there for the Army All-American game. I stayed in touch with him while he's been at Michigan. And going to the Lions and him being such a good player and having such a great season this past year, it just storybook is a pretty good word for it, man. And I feel like he's one of the kids that I connected with in a way that I rarely do because it just doesn't make a lot of sense. I mean, they don't want to be my friend. I don't really want to be their friend either. But because he went to Dearborn, Divine Child, right down the road, got to know his dad, who was an All-American at Michigan. His whole family's a Michigan. It just kind of happened that way. And so it's really cool that he's going to the Lions, the team that I root for, my NFL team. Unfortunately, yes, I have been a Lions fan my whole life. Haven't won a playoff game since 1991. I was 7 years old the last time they had any playoff success. So good God, I hope he can be part of that change. As Barry Sanders said when he was drafted, hopefully Aidan can help restore the roar, dude.
There you go. Like if I went out and became a Tampa Bay Buccaneers fan, or if I were a Cincinnati Bengals fan, like something like that, you can't get on board with those teams that are being, that have. It's always okay to get on board with the Lions because.
By the way, how about the freaking ovation that Barry Sanders got announcing a draft pick for the dude? That guy might be the most beloved player in professional sports.
He's such an enigma. I just feel like every time you see him, there's like this aura because it's almost like you don't kind of wish it, but you wish Jordan's last shot would have been his last shot. Like when a player just leaves and they leave at the top, it leaves this sort of mystique about them. And I think few people have that like Barry Sanders, man. He was just, you're as big of a Barry Sanders fan as there is out there. He was incredible.
I was Barry Sanders for Halloween about 4 years in a row. I have about a million a million football cards of him.
Well, you were more like Larry Sanders.
Correct. I've drawn hundreds of pictures of him over my years. Dude, I was obsessed with Barry Sanders. I was gonna say this. They say that scent is the sense most tied to memory. Like when you smell something, it really can trigger a memory for you. When I watched Barry Sanders back in the day, it brought a feeling over me watching an athlete perform like that I have never felt watching another player, dude. He was that special of a dude, special of a player. That's where my Lions fandom really came from because they haven't ever really been that good. But Barry Sanders was so special and so much fun to watch that I'll never like another player like that again in my life. And he's the man, dude. And that draft was out in Vegas. I don't know how many Lions fans were really there. I can't imagine that many. And when he came out onto the stage to announce that pick, it was standing ovation, roaring. I mean, you could even see Barry was kind of like, thank you for that, man. What a warm welcome. And he's
NFL royalty.
He's the man. There's no other way to put it. So this turned into the Barry Sanders hour, apparently. But Aidan Hutchinson going to the Lions. I love it. I hope he's awesome there. I hope he helps bring the Lions back. Now, the Lions, the defense still has some ways to go, but the Lions offense is coming around. They got a chance to be decent next year. I hope they are. I hope Aidan Hutchinson is part of that on defense, and he was picked number 2 overall. Number 31 overall, another first-round draft pick. We weren't sure if he was going to go in the first round, but he goes in a really good spot to the Cincinnati Bengals, Daxton Hill, man, and now he becomes part of a really good team, a really good defense, and a really good secondary. I don't know, if he's being billed as a day one starter, but I'm sure he's going to push for that, and he can do so much on the field. We talked about it before, the ability to play nickel corner, I mean, you could put him out as your boundary corner, and he wouldn't look out of place out there. Maybe he runs safety back there as a little bit more of a ball hawk guy. I mean, he does it all, man. He really does it all. That's just a really cool spot for him to go to a team that was just in the Super Bowl last year.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, there's absolutely no question about it. I'll be honest. I was reading something else.
What's happening over there, dude? Are we good?
I was reading something else I was reading some news about Josh Ross. And so I got totally distracted. And I was going to try to bullshit my way through the response, but I was so lost. There was no
all
way
right.
to do it. There's no way to do it.
Daxton Hill's a good football player. Went to a
Daxton Hill.
team.
Yes, he did go to. I was surprised as well. I was. I think I tried to stay up as late as I could. Definitely didn't think Daxton Hill was going to go first round. I know that there was some rumblings about it, but I didn't personally think he was going to get there. And I mean, I think it's awesome, man, when you can have 2 first rounders and that's something you can hang your hat on and you can sell that to recruits. And obviously, Michigan's continued to do well in the NFL draft. And I even put up a story about that. I mean, in terms of having a player selected in the draft, I mean, they're one of 3 programs. It's University of Florida and USC in terms of having a player selected in every single draft in the Common Era. So Michigan is one of those NFL factories. They continue to churn out talent, and it'll be interesting to see what happens with Daxton Hill in the NFL, because I feel like people look at his Michigan career and feel like there was a lot left to be desired, like based on what his recruitment was like. And that's not necessarily his fault. I don't think Daxton Hill was the type of guy who was hyping himself, but there was a lot of hype surrounding his recruitment. And I think people just expected more, at least people who don't watch the game as closely maybe as some of the people like you and I might.
Well, you mentioned 2 first-round picks. Should have been 3. David Ojabo obviously ruptured his Achilles during his pro day at Michigan. Sucks bad. Yeah. But honestly, well, don't get me wrong. Going top 10 or 15 is a much bigger deal than where he got drafted, but he still went pretty high, man. He went number 45 overall in the second round, and he went to an awesome spot. He goes to the Ravens, so he goes to a franchise with an incredible defensive background. They weren't very good on defense last year, but he's one of the reasons why that's one of the reasons why they drafted a guy like him. They also drafted Kyle Hamilton, so immediately get some talent injected in that defense. But he goes to a team with a great defensive background. He teams up with another Harbaugh. Now he's with John Harbaugh. Mike McDonald is back there as the defensive coordinator. And oh, by the way, he's now the opposite edge with his freak show friend Odafe Owe. I know as Jason Owe when he was in high school, but he's gone back to his traditional, I think, Nigerian name, if I'm not mistaken there. And that dude's I think he set the all-time record for defensive end 40. He ran like a 4.39. I mean,
that's ridiculous.
As freaky as David Ojabo is, Odafe Owe is even freakier. But it's just, I don't know if you could find a better spot for a guy like that than the Ravens.
No, Ojabo feels like a Baltimore Raven.
Yeah, dude,
and as soon as I saw that come in, what's that? What were you going to say?
He's not going to be able to wear 50.
Well, he's not going to get that. But I mean, the name on the jersey, like the vibe, the way he plays, everything about David Ojabo screams Baltimore Raven. Obviously, you would have loved to have seen, him go in the first round, and it sucks that things played out the way that they did. But you're right. All the things that you named off, I mean, being able to play for Mike McDonald again and John Harbaugh and being able to play with a high school teammate, I just think he's going to fit in really well. Mike McDonald's obviously going to know how to utilize his talents. He's going to know what he has in Ojabo. And I think, obviously they're planning on a full recovery from that guy. So I'm just excited to see him out in Baltimore, man. The whole, between Aidan Hutchinson going to Detroit and Ojabo going to Baltimore, those 2 landing spots to me could not have been more perfect marriages for either player.
It's pretty cool. It's pretty cool how that worked out. And I don't know about perfect fit in terms of all the outside storylines and this and that for Daxton Hill, but to go to a contender, I mean, that's, whenever a big time player goes to
Joe Cool, get to play with Joe Cool.
Yeah. Whenever a big time player goes to, it gets drafted in the bottom of the first round, it's like, damn, what an opportunity, man. Because, those are the good teams. The bottom 10 picks in the NFL draft are your top 10 teams from the previous year. And, the Bengals were just in the freaking Super Bowl, and now he gets to go there and might be able to play right away. So that's obviously a pretty awesome spot for him. I'm trying to figure out. Okay, so the Ravens don't officially retire jersey numbers, but Terrell Suggs wore 55 for the Ravens for like 15 years. I don't know if Ojabo is going to be able to roll in there and say, "Hey, I'm the rookie. I'm wearing double nickel." I don't know if that's going to happen. So we'll see. But I always like the prospective jersey numbers for these rookies when they're coming into the league. But anyway, that's a big number in Ravens territory. The fourth Wolverine
maybe he
off
goes
the board.
single digit. Maybe he goes single digit and just goes 5.
Could be all right. Well, that was Hollywood Brown, and he got traded to the Cardinals, so that number is also available. Yeah, we'll see. See what he looks like. Wasn't he 71 as a true freshman? He talked about. He talked about it. He's like, I don't know. I didn't know anything about it. They just gave me some trash number. Remember that? And then his coach, hey, wait a minute. That was my number when I played in high school. Way back when David Ojabo was a guest of the podcast, he talked about that. So, no, still really cool to see him get picked. And obviously being picked 45th isn't top 10 or top 15 money, but that's still life-changing NFL money, dude. And I can't be happier for a dude like David Ojabo, given his background as well. The fourth Wolverine off the board was Hassan Haskins in the 4th round, number 131 overall to the Tennessee Titans. So another good team. Not going to be a lot of opportunities for Haskins there with King Henry, carrying the ball like 30 times a game. But, Henry, he carries a heavy load. He gets dinged up here and there. He has to come out and take a breather here and there. I don't know what Haskins' prospect would look like as a rookie running back on that team, but it's a good team. They like to run the ball. Whatever you do with Derrick Henry, you can pretty much, I'm not saying Hassan Haskins is Derrick Henry. He's not. But whatever you do with him, you can also do with Hassan Haskins. He's not like a complete change of pace back or a scat back where you wonder what the fit's going to be like. You can see what the fit's going to like when you watch Derrick Henry run the ball. So another pretty good spot for him to at least learn the position from one of the best in the league. I don't know how much we'll see Hassan Haskins as a rookie because Derrick Henry rarely comes off the field, but I don't know. It's a pretty good spot for him to learn the game and find out how to do it at the highest level.
Yeah, and if you haven't, check out the story that we put up today about Taylor Lewan's reaction to Hassan Haskins being drafted, because it's hilarious. Head coach Mike Vrabel obviously is a former Buckeye himself, and Taylor Lewan was very grateful that the Tennessee Titans still brought in Hassan Haskins, considering what happened in November. Hilarious video, but yeah, you're right. I think that
real quick, that's such a funny dynamic in
hilarious
because it's a grown man and a grown man. One's the head coach, one's one of the better players on the team, and Lewan just goes in. He just goes in, and it's just like, I don't know. You can't do that in college. You're not going to see anything like that in college, but in the pros, it's just funny to see. You've got a couple dudes, and grown men, family men in there. Taylor Lewan's probably in his early 30s at this point, right?
I'd say so. Yeah.
Mike Vrabel, not a very old guy, so they're not that much difference in age, but it's just, I don't know, really cool. Yeah, go check that out if you haven't. All right, sorry to interrupt.
No. I think, you're right. I think it's going to be hard for him behind Derrick Henry to get reps, but you're right. If could be very easily, if there's an injury there or he's out for an extended period of time, Hassan Haskins could find himself once again, like he did for Michigan, carrying the load against, teams that are going to want to be physical with him, and he seems built for that. I know Tennessee likes to run the ball, and Hassan Haskins obviously likes to run the ball, so it seems like a good marriage, and hopefully Hassan Haskins gets some opportunities. I see Ron Thomas asking for over-under on 10 rushes for Hassan Haskins this year. I would say over confidently for sure. Yeah. Absolutely.
I would say over that. He's not going to be in every down. I'd have to go back and look at Tennessee's roster now. I can't remember the dude's name. They had that backup running back who actually came in and did pretty well while Henry was out last year, but I don't know his contract situation or if he's still on the team or what. But I think he'll carry it more times than that. That's barely even seeing the field right there. But until Derrick Henry is past his prime or not with the team anymore, that's his team. He's going to get the lion's share of the carries. And why wouldn't you? That dude's an animal, man. He's one of the best running backs in the league. A couple rushing titles under his belt. So, not to be surprised that he's not going to come off the field very much. And the last pick of from the Michigan football roster, Andrew Stuber. It's funny. I was thinking about tweeting this earlier in the day. I was like, it just doesn't feel right that an NFL draft is going to go by and the Patriots don't pick a Michigan player.
It's Michigan, Baltimore, New England, triangle, like if you've got dreams of playing in the NFL, Like, to me, it's like, why not go to Michigan? Because you know that Baltimore or New England, if you can ball out and make a name for yourself, those are going to be two for sure destinations for you.
Well, Baltimore is real obvious why. I mean, Jim
Right.
and John Harbaugh talk back and forth. You can
Correct.
get a very true, very real.
Who else in the country has that?
Yeah,
Nobody.
you're not going to get that. And the Patriots just seem to like the way that Michigan guys play. There's a couple of them. There have been a couple of them on the roster. Chase Winovich is no longer there. He's with Cleveland Browns. But Michael Onwenu showed up a lot of people last year. Yeah, Josh Uche. There's been there was a guy named Tom Brady who was decent. I mean, so maybe that's why. I don't know. No, that's probably not why. But anyway, Stuber goes to the Pats in the 7th round, number 245 overall. I don't know this for sure, but Andrew Stuber's from Connecticut. You'd have to think the dude's a Pats fan, right? Growing up in Connecticut when the Patriots were at their prime and Tom Brady. I mean, I would assume. I'm making an assumption there, but I'm sure he liked now growing up, and now he's on the team. You know, you wonder 7th round picks. They don't have the highest hit rate, but Stuber seems like a pretty high floor kind of guy. I mean, he's 6'7", he's 340. He's got position versatility. You can put him at a couple different spots. I don't know, man. I mean, if
he's
you look
the kind of guy that you would think would do really well at a place like New England.
Yeah, that too. Yeah, just kind of cut out for it. He's going to come in. He's a no-nonsense guy. He's not flashy. Doesn't need any red carpet. Just, come in, go to work, and play your part. If you looked at every guy drafted in the 7th round, and I'm not going to pretend to know the ins and outs of all those guys picked, he'd be one that I would say, I think he might make it. I think he might stick. I think he might find a spot, and we'll see what ends up happening with Andrew Stuber with the Patriots, because I think that's a pretty cool thing for him. Like I said, I don't know for sure. I might be able to reach out and ask him if he grew up a Patriots fan. I wouldn't be surprised if he did, being a Connecticut kid. I remember going up to Darien, Connecticut, Darien High School is where he played, and I sat down and did an interview with him and his coach in like a science lab. The football coach was also a science teacher, and I remember connecting with him because I was that same way. I was a science teacher and a coach, but then I wanted to do an interview with Stuber, and the coach wouldn't leave. He just sat right. He just sat right there next to him. So I don't know, whatever. I always thought that was cool. Coaches usually don't do that. I was like, I remember thinking like, are you gonna leave, dude? Like, I'm about to do this interview. He just sat right next to him. So I was like, all right,
out of here.
We'll do it with him. We'll do it with him right in the room. And now
we'll do it live.
One of the last things I want to talk about before we sign off, we're coming up on 45 minutes here. Chris Hinton decides to leave school early. Okay, so Josh Ross wasn't drafted. Vincent Gray wasn't drafted, but these are guys who have exhausted their eligibility at Michigan. It was time for them to move on. You go, you try to work out, you try to impress, and see what happens, and they weren't picked. Okay, they'll get an undrafted free agent opportunity somewhere. Maybe they'll have a cup of coffee in the NFL. Maybe they won't. Whatever. That's the way it goes. Chris Hinton, though, decides to leave early as a true junior to go pro and is not drafted. And you find yourself asking, like, why the hell did he do that? What advice was he getting in from who? From whom? Is it whom? I never know which one to use. Why did he leave? Why did he go right now? And I didn't really realize this until I started putting up a draft story that now I'm not going to have to use for him. He had 4 tackles for loss during his entire Michigan career. It's a former 5-star kid, athletic kid, 6'4", 315. Looks like he's got all the physical tools to be really effective, and he just wasn't really at Michigan. And so you're wondering, like, why the hell did he leave early and try? I mean, remember we talked about this with Donovan Peoples-Jones too. He left early, never had a 100-yard game at Michigan, wasn't an absolute star like a lot of people thought. And maybe that was because of how he was used at Michigan, because he's been pretty darn good for the Browns. Yeah. But he left early to be a 6th-round pick. And now Chris Hinton left early, and he didn't get drafted at all. What the hell's going on, man? Why did he leave? What is this all about?
Well, it's weird because, his dad played in the league. It's not like they're inexperienced
really
with
freaking good in the league. Yeah.
Right. Really good in the league. I don't know what kind of advice or what kind of feedback he was getting, but obviously I think it was enough to where he thought he was going to get drafted, right? You don't enter the draft if you think you're going to go undrafted. You probably come back for another year. So, yeah, I'm not exactly sure what happened there, but you're right. When you go into the numbers, it wasn't that impressive of a career. I'm not saying he doesn't have a high ceiling, but certainly just a lot didn't happen at the University of Michigan. And Michigan has a need on the defensive line. You would have loved to see him come back, team up with Mozzie Smith in 2022 and try to really put a lot on film, A, because Michigan needs it, not like he cares, but B, because I think he needed it. Evidently, obviously, he needed something more on film, and NFL teams pass up the opportunity to draft him. So, but yeah, Michael, as Brandon said, Vincent Gray didn't have a choice. Josh Ross didn't have a choice. Chris Hinton could have come back and arguably should have come back to put more on film and just didn't. And, you never know why these guys leave and what goes into it. And there might be something that's deeper there that we're not aware of. And, there's no way to know that. But it sucks.
To your point, not any of my business, nor do I care to talk about people's, what they've got. But like financially, he didn't need it either. Like that's not my business to know what the Hintons are doing. But like, Dad played a long time in the NFL. He's been very successful after his NFL career. I talked to them quite a bit, actually, as well, down during that same Army All-American game where Aidan Hutchinson was. I'm sorry, not Aidan Hutchinson. Which one was that?
Well,
I remember talking to Chris Hinton and his family quite a bit. But anyways, point being, some people like they can't wait to get out there and start getting paid. It wasn't like a need type of thing for him, and that. So you just wonder. You wonder what kind of feedback he got. You wonder what kind of advice he was getting in from who, and why he ultimately decided to leave when he could have come back. And this isn't us saying it. He should have come back. He didn't get drafted. I mean,
hindsight.
yeah. I mean, hindsight.
Did you think he would go undrafted?
I didn't. I thought he would get picked. I thought it would be late, but I thought he would get picked. I mean, dude, you don't find dudes 315, running around like he's able to move around. I mean, I think, now he's all right. We see some people coming in here with the undrafted free agents news. Josh Ross to the Ravens. There you go. Shocker. Another Michigan guy going to the Ravens. And Chris,
is that final, or is he just suggesting where they should go?
I'm assuming that means these undrafted free agent signings happen like immediately when the draft is over. So I'm guessing that this is really what's going on. And Chris Hinton to the New York Giants. And that would not surprise me at all.
Yep, that's right. Yep.
It wouldn't happen. It wouldn't surprise me at all if Chris Hinton sticks, because he's got some physical tools that are rare. But again, if you're going to go early and you go undrafted, then you shouldn't have went. I mean, it's just that simple. And so we'll see what happens with him. And I hope he does great. I mean, I hope his career turns out. He's a story you hear about, like undrafted, now one of the best D linemen in the league. I mean, those stories happen.
I mean, the only scenario, and I see people mentioning Vincent Gray and about coming back for a COVID year. The only scenario where I could see, still going to the league when there's more you could put on film is if you just, whether you've been told directly or you get the sense that your playing time, you got a kid like Will Johnson coming in to play corner. He's probably not going to spend a lot of time on the sideline. So for a guy like Vincent Gray, is there a chance you even keep your starting job next year? Like, do things get much better for you? And maybe that was what was going through Chris Hinton's head, but it's not like there was a lot of depth on the defensive line. So you try to reason it, and it's just, I think you thought he would get drafted. I thought he would get drafted. Clearly he thought he would get drafted, and it's surprising he didn't, but we'll see what he does out in New York.
I thought, and to your point, very different scenarios for Vincent Gray versus Chris Hinton. I mean, the amount of time that they've both been at the school, the situation in terms of recruits being brought in behind them at the same position. Michigan just brought in a loaded defensive back class, and Vincent Gray, I mean, he was all right. He was never awesome at Michigan. It's not out of the realm of possibility that a guy like Will Johnson severely eats into his playing time, or if they even look to go in a different direction from Vincent Gray with one of the other younger guys. I mean, a guy like Jaden McBurrows, or, some of these other DJ Turner, really came out. I mean, you
still got Jamon Green out there who's not,
Yeah, I mean, he had been splitting reps. It wasn't like he was the every single down lockdown corner out there. And so, yeah, you wonder what those conversations are like. But, I mean, like, Jim Harbaugh kind of comes off to me as like, he's not going to bullshit you. He's going to sit you down and say, like, I think your time's done here. I don't know if he says it like that, but I think those discussions do take place behind closed doors. And when you're a fifth-year guy like Vincent Gray and you want to play in the league, you go. And so maybe he could have come back, but it might not have been up to him. And it very well could have been out of his hands. So, but with Hinton, there's no way Michigan said, yeah, leave, dude. It's time for you to go early. No, they don't have the depth, and he's a pretty good player. I mean, he was effective at Michigan. He wasn't super, super productive, but he's a good player. You can put him out there on every play on the D line, and feel good about what he's going to do.
I mean, his size and his experience at that position counts for a whole hell of a lot. So you would have loved to have him back.
Brad Hawkins, another one a couple people have brought up, serviceable, very solid, good player for Michigan, but he lacks some of the things you need in the NFL. We talked about that before. If you're going to go pro, you probably need to be elite at one thing. And I don't know if Brad Hawkins is. Vincent Gray is not. Josh Roth is not.
Maybe Hassan Haskins is the one exception to the rule, because I don't think Hassan Haskins is elite at anything, but he is really, really, really good at a lot of things. There aren't a lot of guys who can truck, 3 defenders for 10 yards, but also hurdle guys in the open field. Like that's a pretty unique skill set.
We'll see how he ends up being utilized and what his NFL career looks like. I would make a slight argument that he could be in the elite category when it comes to being a special teams player. He did a ton of that at Michigan.
Yeah.
Played on all the special teams units at Michigan. And, oh, by the way, he never gets hurt. He's always ready to go. I mean, availability too. I mean, as much as he carried the ball to be available, as much as he was, that's a trait that you love in players, and that's on an elite level for him as well. But you're right. Physically, athletically, he's not going to be elite at anything. He did have the most bench press reps as a running back. I don't think you're going to look at that and be like, well, there's my guy. But
right.
To your point, I don't know if you'd grab any one single trait about Hassan Haskins and say he's elite at that, but like everything is really, really
good. Yeah.
He's a 4th round pick. I mean, the evidence speaks for itself. So anyway, that's the NFL draft recap. 5 Michigan players drafted, 2 in the first round, should have been 3. David Ojabo slides just a bit off of the injury to the 45th pick in the 2nd round. Haskins to the 4th round, and Andrew Stuber late in the 7th round to the Patriots. And I think he's got a chance to stick out there in Foxborough. So we'll see how that ends up playing out. Chris, anything else on your mind that we need to get off the chest here before we close it up until we come back on a Wednesday night? Saturday, you feeling good? I mean, things are happening for you over there. I mean, I don't know. Anything else, dude? Anything else?
I don't know, man. I feel like I always have so much to say, and now I don't know. I feel like I've run out of gas. I mean, it seems like there's always like a down period, and you're not really sure, where the next piece of news is going to come from. And then all of a sudden, things happen with the basketball program, and you've got the draft to cover. And so it's always interesting times in Ann Arbor. There's always seems to be things that are happening or things to talk about.
You know what? We talked about this earlier. We're not plugged in, obviously, in any asking about your countertops from the laptop.
I got all the soot off of it. There was like burn marks and soot and shit, so I had to get all of that off. But that's. Thank you for asking, Adam. See,
there's another. Hassan Haskins is also elite with ball security. So I mean, like those aren't your typical.
I'm not
traits.
trying to knock. I'm just saying, like you would look at a guy like Reggie Bush and say, okay, there's some elite athleticism. There's something there, elite speed, whatever. I just think Hassan Haskins is one of those where he is the exception to the rule, where he's just so good at a lot. Durability counts, ball security.
If you made a list of all the things you want your running back to be. Being good at special teams, being good at holding on to the ball, and being available aren't necessarily at the top of the list.
Yeah.
So if he is elite at those things, those are some of the traits that get pushed down the list a little bit. But anyway, at any rate, there's a reason why he went in the 4th round. It's because he is really, really good at a lot of things. So, anyways, there you have it. We'll be back on Wednesday, I think. I mean, it's we'll see if it's necessary. I mean, if some more developments happen with basketball and some more stuff goes on, then obviously we'll be back. But doing this almost hour-long show that we said was going to be a short one on a Saturday, we'll see if we need to come back on Wednesday. But thanks for listening, everybody. If we are back, it'll be on Wednesday. If we are back on Wednesday, we'll see you then. If not, we might be back in a little over a week. So we'll see. Maybe me and Chris get a little mini vacation right here. So
I need to get, hopefully next time I come back, I'm tan, because my complexion, I need to do something with the camera, something with the lighting. You look like you just got back from Puerto Rico, and I look like a corpse over here. I look like they just pulled me out of the refrigerator.
Well, I hope you're feeling all right, dude. You look sick, you pasty bastard.